Hello and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Monday, November 11th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it is great, as always, to be with you. You know, to think that a week ago today we didn't know how things would shake up within 24 hours, that was pretty incredible. I remember ending the show last Tuesday by saying, tomorrow we may be in a different America. And I know that many of us are still coasting on the high of what happened last week. But it also appears that some people are not coasting on the high of last week. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, many of us are aware of how much people have a Trump derangement syndrome, how much people despise the future and former president. And I thought, in subsequent episodes, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, but I didn't want to devote too much time to it because I think, frankly, that it's just plainly obvious. However, I actually want to go back on that. I do want to devote a fair amount of time to it because this is absolutely crazy what we continue to see from people with regard to this President Trump win. And I think that there's going to come a moment where we really are going to have to use a favorite word of the left wing, a cultural reckoning with regard to this insanity that Trump is Hitler, that Trump is going to suspend our civil rights. I saw this TikTok online of this black girl who was sitting at a restaurant and she was eating and filming herself. And the caption was, "Eating before the whites only signs start to come out." And, I used to think that this was kind of fringe. I mean, I didn't think so, of course, in 2016 and 2020, but I thought, you know what, enough time has passed. People have gotten used to Trump. I think there's been a backlash over the past few years against wokeism. I think largely that accelerated after October 7th. But I thought still, people are largely kind of aware that Trump is here to stay. And they've gotten rid of some of those more immature 2016, 2020 era ways of thinking. No, apparently not so much. So we'll be looking at some of those and analyzing what I think is really behind this. It's a fascinating thing to consider, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts. Is it brainwash? Is it that they genuinely believe this? Is it that they want to assert a kind of moral superiority and moral righteousness? Is it a love for the drama? I don't know. We'll talk about it. But first, hi to Sean McConnell in the producer's dungeon. Hi. You just awoke from your slumber and we have the misinformation cam back. How nice. We've missed that thing. Okay. Well, this is why.
Have we?
I have missed it. I have definitely missed it. By the way, the last show I saw, I was looking at you and then you were like over here. So I was looking that way and you were on the other side. But whatever. Technical difficulties are, no, kind of like a friend of the show. If you don't have them in the show, then it's like the show isn't the show. All right, let's dive into some of this. First, just to make us feel a little bit better before we go into some of these crazies, there was such a fun video I saw online. Let's roll it, clip 2. That's 75 million Americans. And look at the map of California, too. This is crazy. And should give a lot of us a lot of hope. It's not just that Trump flipped several swing states, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. He even flipped a lot of Democratic states, certainly not enough, of course, to get to win the state in its entirety. But look at this, picture 3 of how much California changed from 2020 to 2024. Whoa! That is quite a significant amount. 40% of California went to Donald Trump. I repeat, 40% of California, the most liberal, alongside perhaps Massachusetts and New York, state in the union, went to Donald Trump. Now, our governor here in California, Gavin Newsom, has thrown an absolute hissy fit since Donald Trump won. And as we speak, he is actually flying to Washington, D.C. to try to talk with members of the Biden-Harris administration, as well as members of California Congress, to establish what he calls guardrails to prevent, the fascist takeover of Donald Trump, to reverse the gains, the progressive gains that he says has come into California. Quoting here from Governor Gavin Newsom, "The freedoms we hold dear in California are under attack, and we won't sit idle," he said in a statement. "California has faced this challenge before, and we know how to respond." Now, according to the LA Times, Governor Newsom called for newly elected state lawmakers, unfortunately, including Adam Schiff, who will go on to continue to represent us here in the Senate. Meaning Gavin Newsom, has called for these lawmakers to come together for a special session to, quote, safeguard California values. And as I said, he is traveling right now to the United States Capitol to meet with various members of the Biden-Harris administration and California lawmakers in order to protect elements of the California agenda. Reading here from the LA Times, he is pushing the Environmental Protection Agency to give the green light on waivers so that California's most stringent vehicle emissions standards can take effect. Again, from the LA Times, this includes a rule governing small off-road engines that would ban the sale of gas-powered yard equipment, including leaf blowers, lawn mowers, and other equipment. And in addition, Governor Gavin Newsom is pushing for a rule to eventually sunset diesel engines and trains and guarantee that trains are zero emission by 2058. So it appears that he's really pushing for a lot of these environmental components. I think that he will also push for, protection from what the president recently announced with regard to the Department of Education. Trump said that he, on day one, is going to overhaul the Department of Education and leave the issue of education back to the states, which he says is where they belong. This is really in an effort, I think, to dismantle, or at the very least, lower the power of the teachers' unions, which wield such authority in our nation. They are the number one contributors to Democratic campaigns, and many have said it's kind of this money sludge where they're giving all this money to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, in turn, funds the teachers' unions. It's very difficult to fire a teacher. Tom Sowell wrote an incredible book about this, where if you look at other professions, lawyers, doctors, there are similar statistics with regard to how many get fired in a given year. Because of the protectors of the unions, it is extraordinarily difficult to fire a public school teacher. What happens is that because they're protected by the unions, these teachers will go into what's called rubber rooms, which are essentially timeout periods for maybe 2 to 3 years instead of being in the classroom. They'll go into these rooms, they'll do paperwork or more administrative tasks, and then after 3 years, they're put right back into the schools. And we see that overwhelmingly, these teachers are put into low-income minority school districts where people go, those school districts, those kids aren't going to succeed anyway. And then no wonder we have a failing education system. Governor Gavin Newsom is one of the biggest proponents of teachers' unions, and he is well aware of Trump's recent announcement. So I think far beyond these climate change concerns, I think he's really going to go in and try to continue staking out his post as the progressive king of California and try to prevent Donald Trump from upending some of those things which California has achieved. But let's again look back at that map of California, because here's what's really interesting. Not only do we see a huge shift from 2020 to 2024, we also see a big shift in some of the lower income working class counties in California. Now, isn't it interesting? For as long as I have been alive, I have heard over and over and over that the Democratic Party is the party of the underdog. The Democratic Party supports those who don't have privilege, who don't have fancy degrees, who didn't grow up in homes with socioeconomic advantages. And then isn't it interesting that all of that just seems to dissipate when it comes to the election, right? Where those counties that are overwhelmingly blue collar are the bigots and the racists and the horrible people who went for Donald Trump. I thought the Democratic Party cared so much about those individuals. We see the same playbook, though. I mean, I remember one of the biggest contributors of my red pill moment when I was a 20-year-old in college was seeing that the way that the left treats Black people who are conservative, that on the one hand, the left would say all the time, we need to protect and defend and amplify the voices of Black people in this country. And then when it came to Clarence Thomas or Larry Elder or Candace Owens or Thomas Sowell or Ben Carson or any other Black conservative, those people were deemed to be self-hating Black people. And so I just love that so many members of the working class went for Donald Trump in this election, because it really lays bare that if the Democratic Party is the party of protecting those who do not have privilege, they have very clearly not succeeded at that endeavor. Just a funny thing before we'll move on to a Joy Reid clip. You know, Brandon Tatum, Sean's making a face. Brandon Tatum, my old colleague here at Salem, told me, or I think he said it on the air once, that he has a framed photo of the members of The View and Joy Reid in his home because he's so grateful to them for the amount of money that he has made off of their stupidity. I love that. Well, here at the LA Times, there is this article in today's version, or what did they call it? Today's edition. And it's so funny. It says, "Don't fall into total despair, Democrats. Election night had some good news." Oh, really? It did. Here's what she says. "State races backed abortion rights." Oh my God. Okay, I just have to pause for a minute. I am a woman. I am someone who is conflicted about abortion. I am someone who recognizes that abortion is a very difficult and painful and emotional issue. I would say I lean pro-life, but I'm not a pro-life absolutist. The obsession, the monomania that people on the left have with abortion is truly creepy. Why are you so obsessed with killing the kids? Why? It is really weird. It's like this Pavlovian response that many people have, where they immediately go to this subject of abortion. It's like, have you really thought this through? Are you really this obsessed with abortion? It's so bizarre, and no one seems to ever pause and go like, why? Why do you have this creepy obsession? They would go, oh, some people don't have health care and da-da-da. Okay. In most of those cases, you are talking about a very slim member of the population. Of course, in instances of rape and incest, I think you would be cruel to deny a woman an abortion. Of course, there are those extenuating circumstances. But my gosh, for the vast majority of abortions, it's healthy children, and it's people who, I'm sorry, may have made an irresponsible decision and don't want to accept the consequences of that decision. Anyway, I'm sorry to get off on that, but I just I can't see this anymore. The amount that people talk about abortion, dear God. Okay, so here they go. State races backed abortion rights. 2 Black women won in the Senate. And Ron DeSantis got slapped. He got slapped? Who slapped him? No, I'm not kidding. Ron DeSantis got slapped. What is this lady talking about? Okay, here I saw Ron DeSantis in the pros. It says, in Florida, Democrat Monique Worrell, the reform-minded African-American state attorney who was ousted by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis in a blatantly partisan move, was reelected. 57% of Florida voters repudiated DeSantis, who had accused Worrell of pursuing lenient sentences and declining to prosecute certain charges. So she's saying that someone who DeSantis had opposed is winning. Okay. Here, I'll read a paragraph for you. This is funny. Okay. So this woman, an LA Times columnist, Robin Abkarian, said, a majority voted for a former president described as a fascist by his own former staff members. who has promised mass deportations of the millions of undocumented immigrants, who has vowed to reinstate his misbegotten Muslim ban. We'll talk about that. Who intimates that he will hand Ukraine over to Russian President Vladimir Putin and allow Israel free reign in Gaza. Okay, thank God the American people saw through this, but I have talked about this so many times. What many on the left do is that they coin these terms. Muslim ban is one of them. And they hammer it until the cows come home. And they actually are complete lies. They do not at all represent what really happened. Book ban, Muslim ban, abortion ban, don't say gay bill. There are so many of these, and each of them are just blatantly false. This Muslim ban that this individual is referring to happened during the first few months of Donald Trump's first presidency. And it was not a Muslim ban writ large where people who are Muslim were in their entirety banned from coming to the United States because they are Muslim. What happened is that there were 6 or 7 countries on the state-sponsored terrorism list, which, by the way, were added under Obama, countries like Syria, for instance, Iran. And Donald Trump put a 90-day moratorium on foreign nationals who had certain visas to come to the United States from those countries while he could have his administration reorganize the immigration system. And so what happened was, when Obama prohibited some foreign nationals from state-sponsored terrorism lists from coming to the United States, no problem. When Trump did it for a temporary amount of time, they call it a Muslim ban. Just as in Florida, when they did the whole Don't Say Gay bill, nowhere in that bill did it stipulate that you cannot say the word gay. Nowhere. What that bill actually said is that it obligated public school teachers in Florida to call students by the pronoun that aligns with their visible gender identity. If the girl looks like a girl, you call her she. If the guy looks like a guy, you call him he. Now, some left-wingers may oppose that and say that it is transphobic, but that is a completely different story than writ large saying that you can't say the word gay. So when I read something like this, and I'm curious to know what you think, and Sean, of course, I'm always curious to know what you think, do these individuals know that they're lying? Does this columnist really believe that Donald Trump, writ large, banned Muslims from coming into the United States? Or are they just doing that in order to gain political advantage? I mean, even if you read this next part here where he said that forgive me, misgendering the LA Times columnist, she said that Donald Trump, quote, intimates that he will hand Ukraine over to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's the thing that drives me nuts about that, okay? So when Putin invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, people in the United States, and rightfully so, it was a horrible thing. It continues to be a horrible thing. We're up in arms. People had their Ukrainian flags, their bumper stickers, their lawn signs, their T-shirts that the United States stands with Ukraine. Now, if we go back 8 years, in 2014, Putin also invaded Ukraine. He invaded Crimea and the Donbass. The Donbass is the region in the east, which largely has been taken over by now by Russia. Crimea is the peninsula or the island, the peninsula, forgive me, that's south of Ukraine, and it has one of the deep sea water ports that Russia was endeavoring to get control of, and they successfully got control of it. But do you remember in 2014 any kind of comparable reaction? I was 14 years old, so I really don't remember much about those years besides being a pimple-infested, braces-wearing, awkward teen. Actually, I wasn't that pimple-infested when I was 14. Sean's like, why are you going here? I don't know. My point is, I don't remember very much about those years besides the awkwardness of middle school, but I don't seem to recall any similar amount of outrage about Putin invading Ukraine. And then in 2022, I think largely because the Democrats saw it to their political benefit to hype this up because of the whole Russia colluded with Trump scandal scandal of 2017. I think they saw it to their political advantage to hype up Putin's acts of aggression because somehow they thought that they could tie it with Donald Trump. But when an LA Times columnist writes something like this, I really get kind of upset by it because it's like, nobody seemed to care in 2014 when Putin took over parts of Ukraine. Now in 2022, Putin took over parts of Ukraine, and Donald Trump has said that he would like to end the war. That doesn't mean that he wants to hand the entirety of Ukraine to Putin, but it means that we are in a situation now where for 10 years now, Putin has controlled some parts of Ukraine, and in order to stop the dying, in order to stop the war from continuing on, we may need to make some concessions. We may need to make a kind of agreement where perhaps Putin retains control of Crimea or gets parts of the Donbass. But it's so unbelievably irrational. And you'll notice that during the debate on September 10th between Harris and Trump, David Muir asked Donald Trump, do you see it in the United States' interest for Ukraine to win this war? By the way, that was not the same question that he asked Kamala Harris. He said to Kamala Harris, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin? But that question that David Muir asked Donald Trump was so misleading. Success in the war requires definition. Victory in the war requires definition. Does it mean that Ukraine gets control of its entire territory once again? Does it mean that it cedes the Donbass? It cedes Crimea? It was never clear. But the point is that these individuals try to tee up these issues to make Donald Trump look exactly like this, to look like someone who intimates that he will just hand over Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. I read that, and what I'm trying to highlight is the subversion techniques, the Muslim ban, the handing over Ukraine to Putin. These are very insidious tactics of deception. And the real question here is, do they know and they're trying to do it anyway? Or do they really, really believe these lies? I have a theory, but I'm going to pause to see if Sean has something to say. If you have an answer, you don't need to have one. But
I think they do.
You think they believe it? I don't.
They really believe it.
See, I'm happy this is happening because we're on opposite sides of this. I believe that they know they're lying, and they're lying anyway. You believe they believe it. Why?
Well, I can't say all with a sweeping brush, but I think people are prone to fanaticism, that they honestly believe what they're saying. Not now, maybe in the higher up ranks of it, people are lying. But I think the people that consume MSNBC or the LA Times or the New York Times or PBS or CBS or ABC or whatever outlet it may be, they do believe it. If they didn't, this would be easier to defeat.
Well, look, you made a distinction that I would like to make. I think there is a big distinction between politicians and journalists and members of the American elite, and then everyday voters. I do think a lot of people my age, and you're right, we can't just, use the sweeping generalization of all. I think a lot of people my age and a lot of voters genuinely believe this stuff because they are brainwashed by the media. However, a person like this individual who is a columnist at the LA Times and many high-up politicians, I am not so sure that they, unlike the American populace, really do believe in these lies because they are in a position to know better. They can spend all day researching this. I am one of those people with that kind of privilege. It is my job to understand the truth and relay it effectively. That is their same job. And so this woman who is writing this, I am not convinced that she actually believes this. Maybe I'm wrong, but she knows better. If she actually does believe this, that's a pretty bad sign for someone in her position. But come on, she has done enough research. She has been around the block enough, if she is a columnist at the LA Times, to know that Donald Trump writ large did not enact a Muslim ban. She knows that Donald Trump does not want to hand over the entirety of Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. She's aware of all of the dynamics leading up to this war, including the fact that Putin took over parts of Ukraine in 2014 and we in the West just went, oh, well. So this is, I really think this is just, and again, it's my speculation. I think this is drama and hysteria and moral superiority. You know, it's similar to the military industrial complex. Sean has recommended to me for some time now that I do a show on Eisenhower's final speech, departing address in the White House, and I certainly will. And I actually read the transcript of it, and it is as eerie and prescient and wise as you say, Sean. But, you know, one of the things that we have seen over the past few years is that there are many industrial complexi in the United States beyond the military industrial complex. Abigail Shrier was brilliant in exposing the therapy industrial complex, that you get these kids into therapy, you medicalize everyday emotions. If somebody lost their cat, you say they've been through trauma. If someone's a little shy, you say that they have social anxiety. You get them on Prozac, you get them on Zoloft, and then it's this whole kind of machine. And I think there is a Trump derangement industrial complex. Seriously, there is. What else? I mean, this idea that Donald Trump is Hitler is keeping so many people employed. It's like the DEI industrial complex. All these damn schools have directors of microaggression. I mean, they have like up the wazoo. The DEI is a thriving industry, a hundreds of millions, if not billion-dollar industry that gives a ton of people jobs. I am telling you, Trump derangement syndrome gives a ton of people jobs. It gives them commentators on these news outlets. It gives them, op-ed columns in these newspapers. It really gives them book deals, professorships. That's what I think we're seeing right now. And over the next 4 years, we are going to see this time and time again because it is an industry. Now, one of the things I want to do on the show, and I need your help with it, is I want to catalog this. And I really want to, at the end of Trump's 4 years, go back and play clips of every single person who called Trump a fascist and called Trump Hitler and say, are you willing to go on the record right now at the end of his 4 years and say that these past 4 years were Hitlerian? Are you willing to go on the record and say that that these past 4 years were a time of fascism? Because in 2016, this is what many of them did. They threw out these labels, and then the 4 years of Trump went by, and we just let it go. We completely let go that they would argue such a thing. So that's what I want to do. All right, let's play a video, unless I saw you maybe wanted to cut in, or no, I'm not trying to make you cut in.
I have so many thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think there's a core group that will never change. They are married to this idea. They have to have it exist in order for their existence to matter. I would say 25-30% of people refuse to listen to logic. They will not change. They will plug things into their narrative until the end of time.
What do you think about my stipulation that it's an industrial complex? It's an industry.
It's completely an industry. Of course it is. And if you follow the money, it's not hard to see that there's a lot of corruption in this country. And I think what we saw on Election Day was the majority of American people saying, enough is enough. And Donald Trump represents the non-establishment, the end of the gravy train, this money train that rules everything from pharmaceuticals to big tech and everything. I think that's what you saw.
That's right. You know, Dennis and I were talking about this on Dennis and Julie, why there is such a hatred of Donald Trump. And we've established some people really believe it. They've been brainwashed. Some people are contributors to the industrial complex and collect paychecks for their outrage. But I think there's a bigger thing at play here too, which is it is a mislabeling or a misunderstanding of the division of good and evil. A fundamental part of being a human being is having a framework to understand the presence of evil. And when you are a follower of God, if you're a religious or spiritual person, you have a kind of worldview about that. You sort of subscribe to the Viktor Frankl's, there are only two races, the decent and the indecent. I think when you're someone who maybe doesn't have that kind of worldview, and I'm not saying this is everyone, and I'm also not saying that having a religious worldview necessarily makes you understand this division better. One of the things Dennis always talks about is that a lot of people who are religious are very misguided. But a lot of people who do not have a religious framework to understand good and evil tend to be on the left. And I really think that this is the way that they understand the presence of evil. I think that they have to cognitively be able to blame something. And conservatives and Trump supporters are very ripe candidates for their blame. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame because, you know, I was saying on Dennis and Julie that there are people who I encounter who may vote like I do, but I would not want to associate with them because some of them I think are very bad people. I tend to think most people who vote like I do are great people. I love them. But there was a story where I was out at a bar once and I was talking with a guy there. I was with some of my friends and he was conservative. And so all of us were like, oh, wow, we're finding some other conservatives out here in Los Angeles. And then this guy, and I have never had this happen to me truly. Like I've never, ever met a conservative who thinks this way. I have met oodles of conservatives in my time in this industry. I've spoken all over the country. I've spoken, dare I say, not all over the world, but internationally, and met so many conservatives. But this guy was praising Vladimir Putin. And he was saying that someone like Alexei Navalny was a lib and deserved to be punished. And I was like, I don't even care that you vote the way that I vote. You're a gross person if you truly believe that. Because I have a vision of good versus evil that transcends party lines. I know that there are good and bad people in all categories of life. And not to paint the left with one broad brush, but if I may draw a theme here, I think a lot of this Trump derangement syndrome is an effort to try to understand evil. And it's also a very simplistic thing. It's very easy to just go, okay, these people are the problem, and not have to actually think deeper than that. So let's go on to this video, which kind of, go ahead, Sean, yeah.
Did you see the opening to Saturday Night Live?
No.
No? There's someone in the chat bringing it up. I saw it. You know, for the last 5 weeks, they've been making fun of Kamala and
her laugh.
And Biden, and it's been kind of funny, except the funniest part's Dana Carvey making fun of Biden. The rest of it is kind of pajamala.
No joke. By the way,
yeah.
I'm being serious.
This Saturday, they took a different approach. They had all the cast members standing there very solemnly saying, pretending as though they were for Trump, because the implication was if they weren't, they would be taken off the air and Trump would come and get them.
What?
That they were yeah. It was an odd thing. It wasn't funny. And they made fun of him and Elon Musk, and the implication was if they didn't step into line with what they think Trump wants, that he was going to shut them down.
Weird.
He didn't want Trump coming after them. You need to check it out.
I will check it out. That's quite odd. You know, on this point of a simplistic reduction of Trump supporters, of a kind of effort to explain the presence of evil or of bad actions or people you don't like. I think we see this on display on a recent exchange on what's her show called? Joy Reid, the Joy Reid show, the crying about Trump winning show. I don't know what her show is called, but Joy Reid on MSNBC. She had on a Yale psychologist, a child psychologist, and she asked the psychologist, what do you recommend for people with, I think she said with Thanksgiving coming up, or the readout? Thank you. What do you recommend for people who may have to be face to face with some of their Trump supporter relatives. Listen to what this Yale psychologist said. Clip 1.
Challenge with the idea of how do you interact with people who you know voted for this, right? If you are an LGBTQ person and you know someone in your family voted essentially against your rights, or you're a woman knowing that, this man was calling people the B word. J.D. Vance was literally calling Kamala Harris the trash and said, we're going to take out the trash. I know a lot of Black women were incredibly triggered by that. And if you then meet somebody and you know they voted for the people who called you trash, or if you're Puerto Rican, and you know someone voted that way, do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me. And I actually
Do you understand people who don't live in the United States watching that and going, these Americans are the softest, most spoiled people in the world? Did you see the lower thirds? It said taking care of yourself during this fraught time. People live under dictatorships. They have to silence their beliefs or their opposition to terrible people. They encounter basic brutal realities that would take vigorous athletic imagination for people like us to understand. And we have MSNBC going, taking care of yourself during this fraught time when you don't like the results of a presidential election in which 75 million of your fellow Americans voted for a person. It's unbelievable. I have something to say, actually, not even about what they said, but the previous lower thirds. I don't know if you caught them. But Sean, your reaction?
Well, this is a woman who threw around the word fascist and Nazi and white supremacist, white nationalist. I mean, she did everything to compare him to Hitler, but she's bothered by the word trash. I just think that's hilarious.
She's bothered by the word trash, but then she didn't seem to be bothered when Biden called Trump supporters trash. So she's only one way bothered by the word trash. Yeah. All right. So let's go back. If we can we just show a picture of the first few seconds of the interview, or we can play the first 5 seconds again? Yes. Thank you. Let's pause right there. Look at that. I didn't even notice that when I pulled this clip. Report: crisis calls from LGBTQ plus youth spiked 700% after Election Day. This harkens back to what Sean and I were talking about when we were dividing the politicians, the journalists, and the American elite from everyday people. I really believe that members of those individuals who called the crisis centers, I believe they really are terrified. And that makes me really sad because they don't have anything to be scared about. Donald Trump doesn't hate LGBTQ people. Quite the opposite. Literally, I don't understand why this is difficult to conceptualize. The only thing that conservatives object to is transing the kids. I'm telling you. That is the only thing we care about. Don't trans the kids. Don't gay the kids. Don't sexualize the kids. Just let them be kids. But I wish these people would really, I wish that there was more of an outrage against these race hustlers and these gender hustlers and these LGBTQ hustlers, because there are these kids who are really genuinely afraid. And, Joy Reid may be making a lot of money going off on MSNBC and talking about Trump being a fascist and Hitler, but there are real consequences to this. There are real young people who watch the news every day and they really feel afraid because of the lies that she's peddling. Does she have any kind of sense of the responsibility that she has or the damage that she is doing to young, impressionable minds who may be scared by this?
No, I think you referred to it as a complex, and I'm connecting the dots, but it seems to me that the major advertiser for MSNBC or NBC in general is pharmaceutical companies. they prey off of this fear and this anxiety, and then they push their pharmaceuticals on the station that feeds this anxiety. It's a lot of wasted energy unless you're profiting from it.
But it is. And here's the thing that I just want to hammer home. Just in the same way as the left, not every member, and there's a distinction between left and liberals, but many on the left talked about their deep concern and their deep allegiance to those who don't have privilege, and then they turn their back on the working class. I want to point out another instance of fraudulence. They claim to care so much about the mental health of our youth, especially our most vulnerable youth, like LGBTQ plus youth. And then they go on and they push these conspiracy theories and they push these wildly exaggerated claims that their rights are going to be stripped or they're going to be in danger. And then we see that there is a mental health crisis among many young people, and especially among LGBTQ youth. And you're going to tell me that these people actually care about that? For all that they talk about their concern for mental health, they are the biggest instigators of mental health crises. That's my 2 cents. That's all I got to say. I'm going to end with MyPillow, and then quickly, I saw a RFK commercial, and just want to give you a quick note about that. It was amazing and also very sad, because we're going to have to get rid of 90% of things in our pantries if we want to live past the age of 60. But first, one thing that you should probably get rid of is your pillow if you don't like it, and replace it with an even better pillow. That is a MyPillow, and you can get right now the standard MyPillow at a big discount. It's available for just $14.88, a saving that is too good to pass up. There's a limit of 10 per customer, so don't wait to take advantage of this great deal now with the promo code Hartman. There's more. You can also take home a 4-piece kitchen set for only $25. Enjoy MyPillow's new mattress topper starting at just $99.99, or pick up the luxurious MyPillow bed sheets starting at $49.98. Now, there's a limit for the standard MyPillow of 10 per customer, so don't wait to take advantage of this great deal now with the promo code Hartman. Visit MyPillow.com or call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman to unlock big discounts. Again, get the standard MyPillow available for just $14.88. Don't delay, order today. Use the promo code Hartman to unlock huge discounts. Okay, so yes.
I just want to say one thing. We had a huge victory on Election Day, and the majority of the American people spoke up against this unholy beast that is the left.
Yep.
But the fight is so far from over.
Oh, I
This
know.
beast will rear its ugly head in every way, kicking and screaming into the night, and you have to stay engaged. You cannot rest. It was a big day, Tuesday, but you have to stay on top of this, because you've got 4 years of Trump, and then who knows what.
Well,
and have we won the House yet? Has that come through yet?
no, weirdly. The results haven't been, I mean, it looks pretty in the bag, but no, they haven't affirmatively come in. You know, as you say, Sean, this LA Times columnist ended. It may take 4 ugly years, but trust me, the pendulum will eventually swing back towards a normal. It always does. Normal, I don't know.
The fight has just begun. You must stay engaged.
Yes, I agree. Okay, on a quick end note, I love RFK Jr. I've actually gotten into some disagreements with some of my colleagues who didn't like RFK Jr. back when he was a Democrat or an independent. I always loved the man and respected him very much. He now, it seems, is going to serve in a pretty high position in the Trump administration, specifically to help America get healthy again. And boy, do we need it. I was watching a commercial of his, or a video that is, where he was talking about various things that he's going to do. And Sean, I almost sent this to you because it made me so worried. I mean, I'm glad that this is being exposed. He had on his desk every single unhealthy food that I eat on a daily basis. And he was talking about how some of the ingredients in the food are like, I'm going to get this slightly off, but they're residual waste from coal that people didn't know what to do with, and they've turned into food dye. Oh God, I wish I could pull up this this video. It's on.
Well, let's do an episode on it.
Yeah,
Why
we're
don't
going to
you,
do an episode on it.
Recalibrate, and we'll
I know.
present it
I
all
am
in
so
one shot.
sorry. I thought I had pulled this, but I didn't. But it is so, you guys, we are in for a rude awakening. And you know what else was on there? Crest toothpaste. I'm like, what's wrong with Crest? Well, we're going to find out. We'll do an episode on it. Maybe we can even get RFK on. But thank you so much for joining me. As always, you can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow.